Welcome back to the Pro Series Podcast. This is episode 125, and today's guest is a special one. I cannot wait to release this and have you guys listen to this. It was such an honor to sit down and talk with him a couple weeks back, and to be able to release this on my birthday makes it that much more special. But this next guest, his name is Merril Hoge. You may know him from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Chicago Bears, ESPN. He has done a lot in his life. He's also a cancer survivor and an inspirational speaker. We talk about his career in Pittsburgh, his end of his career, going into from pro athlete to entrepreneur and everything in between. It's an awesome episode. I hope you really enjoy this episode. But before we get into this episode, please like, subscribe, and review this podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts. And now I hope you enjoy episode 125 with Merril Hoge. Thank you so much for hopping on the Pro Series podcast today. I'm excited to talk to you and just honored to be able to sit here and have some time with you for the next 20, 25 minutes.
Thanks, Eric. It's nice to be wanted. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I want to first start off. It's an honor just because, I live in Pittsburgh and you were on the Steelers and everything. It's just such an honor to be able to sit here and talk to you, which I do want to talk about. You do have a lot of ties still to Pittsburgh. What draws you still to wanting to be a part of Pittsburgh's culture and Pittsburgh Steelers and just be a part of Pittsburgh still?
Well, it's I say this. I've been in Cincinnati for like 25 years. I say I visit Cincinnati, but my home's in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I think it's I just feel fortunate in just the overall fan base, and I love them as a whole. First of all, they're one of the best fans, if not the best, in all of sports, especially in the National Football League. And then they're, I don't know, the bond that I have with fans and that I feel just makes me love Pittsburgh. I love the people here. I love the fans. I love the people. I could be walking downtown and someone was, "Hey, Merril, how you doing?" I don't know from any. And I just like that. I always say I'd rather be remembered than forgotten. And just for fans to say stuff like that, or just say hi, that genuineness. And I've always, when I played, I was like, man, these fans are smart, man. Yes, they want to win, but man, how they know they could tell if you're giving everything you got and you don't win. And they respect that. And there's just uniqueness about them. And I've always felt like this is home. I always call it home. It'll always be home, actually.
Yeah. So you're not from Pittsburgh, correct?
No, I'm from Idaho.
Okay.
I couldn't be further away.
That's so funny. So when it came to you starting to retire from the Steelers, I just actually interviewed another athlete. He was actually competing to go to the Olympics, and he had an injury that kind of changed his whole career output, and he kind of had to phase out of being an athlete, and that mental switch that he had to do because of, you train your whole life to be an athlete, and then you become a professional athlete, and then that's your job, that you're doing that day in and day out, and then you switch into a different career. It's very hard to make that switch. Even though, you're still young and you're still able to start a whole new career, it's just hard to make that switch. Did you have that? Was that hard for you to take that switch?
Oh yeah, it probably was one of the single hardest transitions I've ever had in my life, because ultimately how my career ended, people always say, well, concussions ended his career. I get it all the time in the media, and I'm like, that's incorrect. It's 100% incorrect. If that had been the case, I wouldn't have played after Monday night against Kansas City, and I clearly played after that. Improper care ended my career. And what really drove me to the real struggles that I had, from depression, I had to learn how to read again. Most people don't know this because it happened in the locker room. But I remember a couple years ago when Tua was on the field and how tragic that looked. Well, I actually went into cardiac. That was me 20 years ago or longer. over 20 years ago, in the training room. I went into cardiac arrest. They rushed me to the hospital. Um, I laid there for a couple of days. They finally got me to where I was stable enough to go home, and that really became an arduous journey because it wasn't the physical trauma I was dealing with; it was the emotional loss. I mean, there's a lot of different losses. Like I lost my mom when I was a kid. Okay, the sting of death, I understand that, but there's also loss of purpose. Your job, what you've been doing forever. So I lose something I've been doing for 22 years, and I love. I have no purpose. I have no hope. I have no direction. And that's what really drove me on a couch and into my depression. I was going to counseling, and I was an utter wreck. But it was really some of the principles that I had learned early in Pittsburgh from Chuck Noll, about your life's work is not football. I remember one of the first times I heard that, I was like, "What's he talking about?" I'm 21. I'm going to do this forever. Obviously, he's wiser than a 21-year-old. And I played one game, and then I realized what he was talking about. Nobody's going to play this game. I mean, Tom Brady played it for 3 years, 20 years, whatever it was. And he's still not going to play longer than he played. So, and the position that I played, running back, is the most brutal position. So, your longevity's not there. But that overall principle of your life's work, he would always challenge you to work on it, especially in the off season. And I was 21 years old. So, when everybody's 21, they think they know everything. Oh, yeah. I was at least smart enough at 21 to go to listen to him, that I knew that I'd probably never come across another man like that or leader like that in my life, which I have not. And I listened to his counsel, and I had done a lot of that processing. And even though my career ended in the middle of the season, which is a brutal way to end it, and that was also part of it. Oftentimes it's the end of the year, so you don't really hit you in the face until the season starts next year. Well, it hit me in the face the exact next Sunday when I'm laying on the couch and somebody's doing my job and I'm not there. And I've been playing for 13 straight years, never missed a game, never missed a practice, and it just was over. So it was really those principles and these words here as a kid, the find a way principles in my life, that I was responsible of doing something to make that transition. Nobody's going to come get you off the couch. Okay. And nobody can get you off the couch at the end of the day. Nobody can make you do things. And, I'm writing a book actually on this particular subject called ACEs. It's Adverse Childhood Experiences. And it's really about, we have more emotional trauma in this country that weighs us down and pulls us into quicksand versus physical trauma. Even in sports, even though those symptoms can be the same, physical trauma are one of those things that have great treatment programs and ways to heal. Emotional trauma, great programs to heal. It's not medication, quite honestly. That's actually probably one of the last steps. But it all starts really with yourself. That first step of getting off the couch, I realized that was on me, that I had to move off the couch and start something and take action. And this is what these words have always inspired me to do, is do something about my circumstance. Because I think everybody would appreciate this. I think they're smart enough to know this. You know what the results are going to be if you do nothing. I don't think anybody could argue what those results will be. So doing something about your circumstance, especially in an emotional state that I was in, there was just this little bright hope, or I shouldn't even say it was hope. It was just like a spark of light that was left in me. And I realized it was started with me. I need to get off the couch. And once I did that, now I'm not just saying I got off the couch and everything worked out great. It was not like that. It was a 5-year journey. I had to learn how to read again. I was rebuilding and going into another career. But I go back to all the things that I had established for nearly a decade after Chuck Noll had challenged, all of us all the time to, this is not your life's work on other things, finish your education, take advantage of the opportunities you're going to have. I remember he said, use the stage, don't abuse the stage. And all these principles that he taught, I'd executed those, and I had created some avenues and options for my life's work. And one of the first actually calls that I returned And keep in mind, he reached out to me first, and I didn't take it. I didn't even. It just. I call it. There's a toxic blender that people can get in, and the reason I know the toxic blender because I've been in it. You point fingers, you cast blame, and you make excuses. I have been there before, and no one I've ever known that's been in that blender, personally, I've been in that blender, has ever garnered success by sitting there doing that. You go nowhere in life. And that's exactly what I was doing. But Lynn Swann had reached out to me. Lynn Swann was on the number one crew at ABC, college football, Keith Jackson and Greasy. And I returned that call. So that was one of my first things I did once I got off the couch, because broadcasting was one of my options, that and coaching. And he offered Michigan was playing Illinois in Illinois. I'm in Chicago at the time. So I had somebody drive me down, spent 2 days shadowing. And that was the start of digging myself out of a dark space that I was in. And I say this all the time. I'm a product of a lot of people. People challenged me, inspired me. I find hope in people. And Lynn Swann gave me hope, and he leaned out and reached out to me. I didn't have to do that, and but it all starts with you, and then that started taking that help. I started reaching out, and then that's when things started to grow and change for me. But it was about a 5-year journey before I really got peace with everything. But I don't have peace if I don't start with myself and getting off that couch, and that is really one of the things I try to help people realize and take ownership of, because that's when things change. That's when you break chains and end cycles. And taking ownership doesn't mean it's your fault. Okay. Ownership is just like, I'm done with that. I'm done with that. And I'm going to start doing this. And that as arduous as it was, as brutal as it was, I garnered great value there, because it happened again some 22 years later when ESPN made changes and let me go right after Jaws and I had signed a 5-year deal. They let us go like a month after that, so, but it was a much easier transition because I had already experienced it one other time. And so I used those same tools to make the transition. And that's what led me into the thing that I am passionate about now. And that is speaking, and the opportunities that I get throughout the country to do that. And I'm grateful because football has been a passion since I was a kid. Then broadcasting was an accident, and that doesn't happen unless I stumble across DBE and listen to Chuck Noll. Okay, that probably doesn't happen. That takes me on a journey, and I end up loving every second of that. And then speaking, I kind of stumbled into that, or got challenged to do that, sitting in a chemotherapy chair. And in some of my darkest spaces or moments, these amazing things have happened from it. But it all does start with doing something about your circumstance, digging yourself out, doing the things that you're responsible for and accountable for. And amazing things, incredible things can happen to a human being when they do that.
Absolutely. See, I love that, because one of the main reasons I reached out to you to come on the podcast, a lot of people, like I was mentioning off camera, it's a lot of designers. I've had HGTV people, but I've been doing all these mindset coaches and inspirational speakers and motivational speakers, because there's so many people that are trying to segue from career to career. They're not always into professional sports, but there might be a 9-to-5er that wants to jump a leap, and they're so depressed in that 9-to-5 job trying to jump into this career that they love. And I knew some of that story of you trying to segue into the career. And I think this happens a lot with a lot of someone that puts so much time into the career that they first went out to. I know professional sports comes a lot with, and it's probably an unspoken thing that a lot of pro athletes have to go through after school. And it's so cool. I did not know about the Lynn Swann thing. So it's really cool how you guys kind of, lean on each other and kind of get that support, because you guys all go through somewhat of a similar situation. So I love hearing that. But what was that turning point that you wanted to actually teach others what you were already learning in these low points of your life?
Well, I think that's where this platform I have today is the ability to share a message with people. It's funny, you hear motivational or inspiration, and I never let anybody say I'm a motivational speaker, because I always think of Chuck Noll as soon as I hear that. He was asked about, what about motivating these guys? He goes, you can't motivate. I don't coach motivation. You can't motivate people. Motivation is internal. And it is so true. It's like you can't change somebody's mind.
It's true.
You can open their mind, but you can't change their mind. And they can say, well, you changed my mind. No, I haven't changed it. You changed it. Whatever I said, or whatever happened might have changed, but I didn't change your mind. You changed it. It's like motivation. You can't motivate people. That's internal. But you can inspire them to be motivated, and you can inspire that motivation they have, or inspire motivation in them. And that's why, I've always think of him when I hear those transitions. He's like, I'll just get people that are motivated. It's this business. I'll go find people that are motivated. I ain't got to find people I got to motivate. I ain't got time for that. It's like, I remember I first heard that, I was like, dang, that's true. I'm like, there's a lot of truth to that. So, learning stuff like that, and being, Walter Payton had an impact on my life, indirectly, directly. I've already mentioned Lynn Swan, my kids, people that, are not celebrities that you may not identify with. Quotes by Aristotle, to be able to share this message. And the message is not about me. The message is about what is possible for you and the gifts that you have. And sometimes how we need to self-reflect and open ourselves up and challenge ourselves and realize we're in charge. Okay. And that there's so many things we could be doing and should be doing, and that would change our circumstances, and that would help us get to where we're trying to go. That's what guys like Chuck Noll, Walter Payton did for me. My own daughter has done for me, and I mean a variety of people in my life that you wouldn't know, or you wouldn't identify with based on names. But that's why I say I'm a product of a lot of people. So kind of started and ended there, and that's one reason I love to share that message and see how people take that message and apply it to their life any way they see fit.
That's so cool. I love how there's so many times, there's so many quotes I could quote now, but there's so many things that you go through things in life and you learn, and so many people aren't willing to spread that wealth that they have learned, to help someone else that is maybe going through a negative spot in life or going through a downhill spiral and just need that little inspiring story just to get them up off the couch, like you said, to get their motivate them, to get them into that next phase in their life. So it's so cool to hear your side of it and what you are bringing to it and trying to deliver it to a new audience.
Yeah, well, it's at this point, to be able to help people like that and build relationships with people, connect people, inspire people. Oftentimes I say, do you control your mind, or does your mind control you? Because it starts and ends there. That's a challenge for us all. I am much better at it now than I was 12 years old when I started this journey. But back then I didn't realize what the battle was.
Yeah.
I just learned that, visuals can help you control your mind. Constantly self-reflecting, opening yourself up, having moments of truth can keep you on task and keep you growing and evolving and learning and widening your scope. Those things, Chuck Noll just comes all the time. There's a lot of people are common, very few are uncommon. Can you be uncommon? Is there more you should be doing, could be doing for your craft, your profession, your team? Widening our scope, that challenge and that exercise are invaluable to grow and to learn and evolve. And being able to apply that and learn that has taught me so many things. I mean, my career ended, abruptly in the National Football League, and I was kind of equipped, but minorly equipped to handle that transition. That's why everything just kind of spiraled out of place. And the one thing that I had gotten, even though I was working on other things, and I took that counsel, I mean, I was an NFL player and a Pittsburgh Steeler. And when I went to Chicago, I was a Chicago, and that's how I saw myself. That's what I was. And when I started ESPN, I realized, okay, listen, I am not. I had no emails that had anything to do with ESPN. I never put ESPN on my title. I never did. That was not me. I learned to be that wasn't me. I wasn't. Um, that wasn't my everything, because I know how it can end. And even though it lasted 22 years, I mean, it ended, and there was a lot of life left. And that actually helped me be better. That didn't mean I minimized my job. I was uncommon at my job. I was prepared every day. I did all of the things that I needed to do my job and do it at a high level. But I wasn't. I realized that there's other things I could be doing, and I kept my focus and my scope widened, and that made it much easier when I had to make another transition.
Yeah. This I talked about. I'm going to go back to. I've had a couple athletes on, and one thing that we've talked about is the benefit of starting sports when you're younger, or just doing sports when you're younger, and then getting into the corporate world or the professional world, of how much sports puts you on a good footing for the rest of your life, and with what it teaches you. Um, I actually, in high school, I wrote my senior project based off on what sports can affect a kid and how it can benefit you later in life. So, I mean, you did segue out of sports, but sports is still part of your life. The way that entrepreneurship and motivation speaking, you're still a leader, you're still motivating people. Is that how you feel like you're still using the lessons and tasks that you've learned in sports in today's career?
Well, here's what I didn't transfer out of. I didn't transfer out of structure,
Gotcha.
because at the end of the day, structure matters. I don't care if we're talking about sports, business, life. Without structure, without purpose, without accountability, it's going to be hard. Okay, and I completely agree with the value in sports. It teaches kids. It helps them. With a bunch of tools for your tool belt in life. Structure, accountability, discipline. Passion, working with other people. Team stuff, and then individual stuff. And having that structure and the way things are operated is something you're accountable for and you're responsible for. Those tools are going to have to be applied into the business world. Okay. And I don't care what people keep talking about, well, environments change. Let's look at this. The second there's no structure, it's over.
Yeah.
You're never going to be successful. You're never going anywhere without structure, period. You can't have free lace. I do it when I want to do it. I'll do it when it's convenient for me. That right there is a recipe for absolute utter disaster. You still need all of the things. I go back. I was doing a show, Herm Edwards. I think it was prime time we were doing one day, and Herm Edwards was going off on. I can't remember if it was a player or a team, but he was talking about, this is why they were great. They're structured. Okay, they're disciplined. They're accountable. I mean, they work hard. They're prepared. They play for each other. And he was going on. He goes, you know what? That's just old school. That's old school. And as soon as he said old school, it struck me. That was my turn. And Trey Wingo said, okay, Merril, what do you think? I said, you know what? Everything Herm Edwards said, I completely agree, 100%, aside from one thing. I don't believe in old school. I don't believe in old school. I believe it's the only school. So you're going to tell me in 1965, when they talked about discipline, structure, accountability, execution, responsibility, all of these things that require you to win a championship in 1965, that didn't change in 2000 or 2005, and it's not going to change in 2025. If people are going to be successful, now I'm talking about sports at that time, if you're going to win a championship, that's exactly the things that are going to be on display and are going to be the foundational principles of your team, period. Regardless of your players, those have to be applied. In the National Football League, my guy is as good as your guy. It is so closely knit. It is those little things that will make the difference in all aspects of your team and your game. That's what's going to help whoever wins the championship. At the end of the day, I know this is what I know about the Super Bowl winner for this year. They're going to be the best team. It's not the best defense. Nobody's ever played 60 minutes with just defense. It's not the quarterback. Nobody quarterbacks played all 60 minutes. You got offense, defense, and special teams, and now one of them might be a little stronger than the other. I get that. But as a team, Okay. How well are they as a team and how do they play as a team? And all the things I talked about are going to be in place. If you're sloppy and you have a bunch of penalties, you turn the ball over, I will promise you this, you ain't winning.
Yeah.
If you just run a play and you're like, to them, that doesn't work for me right now. I'm not going to do that. Oh, you're going to be an utter failure, And it's just true in life. It's true in business. And to even hear that, that doesn't matter. Well, I don't want to be a part of that team, and I don't want to be a part of that business because it's utter failure.
Mm-hmm.
Utter failure.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know a bunch of high school coaches that have left coaching because of the lack of structure and the lack of discipline, because it's not fun anymore, because the kids aren't learning really anything. It's just very loose. It's not setting them up for anything in life, really, that lack of discipline and structure.
Yeah, listen, like a lot of people, they think that's okay and that's going to work later in life. Okay. Those are going to be the people that are utter failures and are sitting there going, oh my gosh, now it's too late.
Yeah.
But I just, another reason I'm passionate about being able to, go to a lot of different corporations and events and speak at them. You just, like I said, I find hope in people. I see a lot of I speak at some groups where they have younger people, and I think they kind of get a bad a bad name. But all you have to do is have a few people. It's like playing in the NFL. Yeah, we had one knucklehead. Yeah. Everybody has them. Okay, and they got all the media, and everybody thinks we got 99% of that locker room. I walk in there, and every man's accountable, every man's responsible, and they do anything for you, and they're good human beings. And we're getting a reflection off one guy who's made some mistakes and done some things that are clearly not the norm. And that's true in society. You see how some young people are. There are people like that. There are a lot of people who think, I expect this, I get this, I'm not doing anything for it. But as I have discovered, that's not the majority. I find a lot of young people. My kids are in that age swing too, so I get to see how they are, so many other people around them. And I still think that, first of all, life is going to teach you that. You don't have to take my word for it. You can test it. Go ahead and test it. I'm going to do it when it works for me. I'm going to do it when it's convenient. I'm going to have zero structure in my life. I'll do it when I want to do it. We'll see how far that gets you. Now listen, you can hit the lottery, but then you can do that. But if you want to get any true meaning out of life, those things are going to have to be applied. You're going to go through tough times. You're going to go through good times. It's not a birthday party and a cake ride every day. That's how you appreciate the good times. You got to have some bad times because you got to have a comparison. People have to forget that. Like, why are we happy? Well, because I've experienced so many things that are a struggle and I've been sad. That's how I'm not happy. And I've been so happy, and when I'm sad, I know why I'm sad. So, or angry, or whatever the emotion you want to talk about. So, I just think there's more good than bad, though. Still, even though we hear those things from the young people, I see a lot of great energy with young people and what they do to be successful.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to finish on, when can we look forward to, you did mention a book. When do you think that will be coming out? Or are you just in the early stages of it?
Well, I'm about halfway through it. I wrote a book called Brainwashed, and that was more on the physical trauma of contact sports and, CTE, getting CTE later in life. And what struck me is Mike Webster was my roommate, and the despicable movie of concussion and what they did to him and his family is deplorable and harmful in all kinds of ways. Hollywood's disgusting on a variety of levels. First of all, Mike Webster died of heart failure. Had a stent in his heart, died of heart failure. Mike Webster, nobody's ever died of CTE, by the way. Okay, CTE is not even a disease; it's a pattern in an observation state, and that is a scientific fact. Anybody that wants to argue that, the first thing you ask them, then send me the scientific literature out of a scientific journal, not Sports Illustrated, because that's not a scientific journal, and show me all the scientific evidence that supports that, because there is none. Okay. And I'll give you all the scientific evidence to verify that it's just a pattern. It's not a disease. And anybody that has an MD on their medical, on their name, on their headline, if they use that in a clinical form, is committing malpractice. So that right there tells you the importance of it and the severity of using that. So when I read the literature, and Mike Webster died of heart failure, but they claim, football killed him and, concussions killed him. And to watch that movie and actually know some of the producers in that movie. And I asked him, why would you not, talk about why he did die? Why wouldn't you? Oh, it's artistic choice. Artistic choice. In fact, this is a piece of information I learned. In Hollywood, if it says a true story, the only thing they got to get right is a couple of names and a couple of locations. That's it. And then they have freedom, artistic choice to do whatever they want, craft it any way they want, in any manner they want. So always be alert when you hear, based on a true story. And there might be, like in Mike Webster's, they got Mike Webster, they got a few doctors and a city right. Aside from that, you got nothing else. And actually, if you watch them do the medical doctrine, how they put the brain in a jar and they jiggle it around, well, that tells you they know nothing about human development and the brain, because that's not how our brain is. It is the most protected organ on our bodies. We have plasticity, you have neuroplasticity, skull structure, and muscle. It is the most protected organ. Now, that doesn't mean, that you can't have a concussion. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that we ignore concussion because we want to do the very best, that we don't have any of that in life. But the leading cause of head trauma in the entire country is tripping and falling. The most dangerous environment is your home. So if you didn't want to have any type of head trauma, you don't let your kids go in the shower, walk down the stairs, play on the trampoline, or basketball, or go on wheel sports for skateboards, bicycles. So perspective is important. The brain is the most protected. And if it were really true, we have hundreds and hundreds of millions of people who play hockey, football, soccer, lacrosse, across the board without any protocols in place. Equipment was paper mache to what we have today, and you had no protocol or care. Well, if it were true, you'd have special hospitals to house all the people that played these rough contact environments and then later in life had a brain disease. Well, your brain's not developed until you're age 25. So between 1 to 25, you shouldn't be doing any of this if it were true. And you clearly don't want to do it at age 14 because something happens to us all that is magical, and it happened to everybody. Everybody goes through puberty. I've coached football. I mean, first of all, I've lived every one of these experiences. I know every aspect of it. I've read all the scientific literature. But if it was really true, and you were like trying to do the best things for kids, the last age you want them to start playing is age 14 because they hit puberty. Now they are bigger, stronger, and faster. 7 to 11 is a bunch of weeble wobbles. And just by energy and force, there's not enough energy and force. I never had anybody who had any type of head trauma, any concussion during that age in 20 years of coaching. Doesn't mean it can't happen. I'm not saying that. And if it's going to happen, it's probably going to be because somebody tripped and fell and hit their head on the ground. Actually, it's probably not going to be from a collision. When they get to 14, well, that's when I did start to see them. Now, keep in mind, in a 20-year period, I had about 5 in that age bracket. So it isn't like everybody's having them and it's happening all the time. And I implemented a head trauma program. So we removed those kids and they didn't play the next week. In fact, I took them out 2 weeks. And I started a program because I started in 2003. And we didn't have even the protocols that exist today. But we have things that are in place that help our kids, help them in the environment of contact sports. And in that process of writing the book, I come across the things that are I don't want to use that word, that are our biggest issues in our country today, and that's the emotional trauma. Like when my career ended, the physical trauma wasn't what I was dealing with. It was the emotional loss. Like I said, it was no purpose. It was no hope. That emotional stuff drove me into absolute darkness. It wasn't the physical stuff. And that's really where we are in this country. Our biggest issue mentally, or from our mental health perspective, is the emotional trauma. The things that are affecting you, rather, you grew up, there's internal environments. I use simple terms. Scientists, they use stuff that complicates things and confuses people. there's aces within the home, so environment, internally, and then there's external, environment. So, like, let's say example, when I was a kid, lost my mom when I was young, because that's an ace, losing somebody, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, parental abuse. There's a list of 10, and then there's external, so things like bullying, socioeconomics. I mean, there's a whole host of things that looks at, and it's ironic when you talk about sports. Value of sports as a young kid helps kids remedy themselves and work through a lot of these aces. People that have other resources to get involved in and be a part of. And I remember that as a kid. When my mom passed away, the only time I had peace was when I was at practice. Once I walked that door and I was with everybody and I practiced and I got into practice. And then I had to relive as soon as I walked out there and went home. But I had peace. That's why we started the Caring Place here in Pittsburgh. It was downtown and off of Warrendale exit. It's a grieving center. The Highmark Caring Place is a grieving center for families that have lost a loved one, because our director, Charlie the Valley, had lost his son tragically, and a combination of a bunch of things that happened. We realized the value of helping people who have lost a loved one, because those resources just weren't available. But the book is going to be obviously much more condensed than that, but helping people maybe understand some emotions they're going through and why, but then ways that they can help themselves in the process. Because I'm not going to write a book where like, well, here's why you're probably dealing with it or feel like this or a trigger for this, and then you leave them hanging. We have to find things, and it's taken me years. So, you can't just do this, halfway. You got to have proper people help you, and you have to have answers. And what's very interesting in this whole process and all of these studies and all the research I've been doing, like medication, and what in our country, it's first thing. There's like 1% of the emotional trauma and the mental instability, about 1% that probably really requires medication. But we got everybody on medication.
Oh yeah.
And that's hopefully what the book will help you with, is that give you some hope in the sense of you can fix yourself, you can repair yourself. These are things that are real. I go back to ownership. Okay, you didn't inflict them on yourself, but you're the one responsible for deflecting them, breaking a chain, and in a cycle, taking ownership and moving on in a different way. And this book hopefully will help people do those type of things, and get themselves in a much stronger state emotionally.
Awesome. I can't wait to read it. I want to finish up on where people could follow you on social media so they can figure out when this book is ready to announce.
Yeah.
You'd go and buy it. So where can people follow you on social media?
Well, I tell you, the best spot is just to go to merrilhoge.com.
Okay.
I have everything right there. And it's Merrilhoge, because my ancestors don't know how to spell. I know there's not two L's, there should be. There's not a D in Hodge. There's no D. So it's Merrilhoge.com, merrilhoge.com. And then all this stuff actually is there. And, I'm hoping to have the book. We're hoping to have it around August, ready to launch and get out to people, because we're about halfway through. But it is it's just one of those things that it's a meticulous thing that you make sure you have everything in order and the most updated stuff to truly help people.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. Well, Merril, thank you so much for hopping on the Pro Series podcast. It's such an honor to have you on the podcast, and can't wait to get this one out.
Eric, man, I appreciate you having me, and thanks for thinking of me, Kay.
Yeah, no problem.